to our next speaker, which is Maximilien Durand. And it's always a pleasure to listen to him speak about art history, especially in relation to textiles. He has endless knowledge. He is an art historian, and between 2011 and 2017, he also had the honor of being in charge of the most important textile collection in the world at the Musée du Tissu. It is Arts Décoratifs. He is also an expert in Byzantine art and textiles, and will be introducing us to his favorite pieces. Maximilien, are you there? You're also in Paris.
I'm here.
Good
Hi.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Nice background.
Yeah, thank you. So, first of all, I would like to thank Philippe Fumano and Lee Edelcourt for giving me the opportunity to share with you an experience I had between 2011 and 2013, being director of the Textile Museum of Lyon. I worked at that time on a big exhibition project based on the collection of archaeological textiles of the museum, and the title of this exhibition was Antinopolis, Beyond Life, Beyond Fashion, Shadows of Elegance in the Desert. Founded in 1854 after the Great Exhibition in London by the Chamber of Commerce of Lyon, the Textile Museum preserves the most important collection of textiles in the world, with 2.5 million of items from pharaonic Egypt to nowadays. Most of the pieces hidden in the storages are still unknown and unpublished. Amongst them was an incredible set of late antique treasuries, hundreds of fragments, complete pieces of whole male and female costumes from the 4th to the 6th century, belonging to the Byzantine high society of a lost city in Egypt, kept in boxes since their discovery in 1898 and never seen, studied, or exhibited. All those pieces, excavated from graves when they covered corpses, were full of dust and bodily fluids. They were very fragile, of course, and every manipulation was avoided without extreme caution and conservation treatments. The beginning of this amazing story takes place between 1896 and 1908. At that time, Émile Guimet, a rich art lover from Lyon, passionate about the religion's history and fan of antique civilizations, had a dream. He wanted to discover the mausoleum of Antinous, the beautiful lover of the Emperor Hadrian, tragically dead by drowning in the Nile during a journey in Egypt in 130. In order to fulfill his dream, Émile Guimet used the funds of his family, enriched by the silk industry and the invention of a new blue dye in the middle of the 19th century. Unfortunately, that dream never fulfilled because the mausoleum of Antinous was never rediscovered. He hired an archaeologist named Albert Gaillet to organize excavations in the city founded by Hadrian at the place of Antinous' death. The name of the city was Antinopolis or Antinoe. The city, located in Middle Egypt, became from its foundation to the 4th century one of the most important cities of the Roman Empire. During the Byzantine period, it was the capital city of Middle Egypt. The population was very cosmopolite, fine, and sophisticated. Unfortunately, it went downhill after the Arab conquest of Egypt and was almost totally abandoned and destroyed after the beginning of the 8th century. Only a few ruins testified from its former splendor when Albert Gaillet began his archaeological campaigns. The first campaign took place in 1896, but the results were disappointing. Albert Gaillet was able to establish a city map, identifying the different neighborhoods of the town, and excavated fragments of stone sculptures, plaster masks, and epigraphical testimonies. Émile Guimet supported a second campaign the year after with the same results, but at the end of the campaign, Albert Gaillet found the real treasury of the city, its necropolis. In the graves, he had time to explore. He discovered very well preserved corpses in luxurious garments woven in linen, wool, and silk. For the first time in history, late antique garments were excavated and exhibited for a few weeks at the museum founded in Paris by Émile Guimet. Very excited by the discoveries, Émile Guimet decided to search funds for a third major campaign dedicated to the excavation of the necropolis of the city. He convinced the Chamber of Commerce of Lyon to give money, promising to give all the textiles to the newly founded Textile Museum after an exhibition of the discoveries in Paris at the Guimet Museum. The campaign of 1898 is probably the most important of all the archaeological surveys at Antinopolis till 1908. The part of the necropolis excavated by Albert Gaillet at that time was, in fact, the place where high rankers, dignitaries, and patricians were buried. The garments found in the graves are of uncommon quality or very precious. Hundreds of tombs were discovered. The textiles, very fragile, were very damaged by the contact with the bodies, and a lot of them were fragments. But around 10 complete costumes, from coats to head accessories or shoes, were taken to Paris and exhibited with a lot of fragmentary pieces at the Guimet Museum. A catalogue was written by Albert Gaillet, describing in a very literary way the findings of this campaign, and that catalogue was not considered as very serious by archaeologists because of the very literary way it was written. But the exhibition was very successful, and the discoveries inspired fashion designers, artists, and writers. After the exhibition, all the pieces were put in boxes and sent to Lyon, where they totally disappeared in the storages. When I began my work as director of the Textile Museum, I was convinced that these treasuries were still preserved in the storage, sleeping in their boxes in a hidden place since their acquisition by the Chamber of Commerce. And I had the chance, after a certain time, to rediscover the boxes. The pieces were in the state of conservation of their discovery. They were very dirty and unfortunately very smelly, stacked in the boxes without any order or label for their identification. We first organized a conservation treatment of all the pieces at the conservation lab of the museum. So you can see here the piece after the conservation treatments. The first glance convinced us of the quality of the weavings made of fine flax, cashmere wool, or precious silk. But we also noticed the unusual typology of the garment, revealing the taste of an exotic high society. You can see here another piece after the conservation treatment. And here the pieces in the state where we discovered them during the conservation treatment. Here are fragments of a male riding coat. Here you can see other fragments. Here you can see the sleeves. And here the conservator doing the conservation treatments. For example, of the high quality of those garments, male high rankers wore precious riding coats made of fine cashmere wool tabby, scratched after weaving to give the appearance of a fine fur, and dyed with cochineal or indigo. These coats, you can see here an example dyed with cochineal, and here all the coats, the riding coats, we rediscovered during that conservation treatments. Those riding coats were cut and sewn using a pattern in order to economize the precious material used. They were also decorated with applied silk ornaments whose iconography was inspired by Sasanian arts. Here you can see ducks in medallions surrounded by stylization of flowers and botanical ornaments. The riding coats were worn with linen shirts, decorated with woolen or silk braids, and with gaiters. Here you can see other silk ornaments with peacocks. And they were worn with gaiters made of woolen tapestry, like in this example of a pair of gaiters in woolen tapestry with Pegasus winged horses in medallion, or gaiters cut into the same scratched cashmere wool as the riding coats themselves. The riding coats were also worn with linen trousers or socks, like in the picture. You can see here on the picture two examples of corpses discovered during the campaigns of 1904 and 1905. On the left, you can see a purple dignitary. He's wearing a carmine riding coat, and on the right, you can see a young charioteer. He was buried with all the material of his activity. You can see that material on the left of the body, and he's wearing pale blue riding coat in cashmere wool. The women in the graves had fine dresses made in the same woolen tabby as the riding coats, but dyed with other colors, pale or dark yellow, pink, green, for example. The most precious of them were decorated with tapestries, ornaments, sewn on the tabby, like in this example, or woven into the plain ground of the dress, like in this example. And the tapestry ornaments show designs with naive flowers, like lotus flowers, for example, or mythological scenes inspired by Greco-Roman mythology. The women had also fine linen underwears, long shirts decorated with flowers, lotus flowers or roses, head accessories like hoods, hairnets, and woolen headbands, like in this example, and woolen headscarves or veils with fringes. Here you can see another hood with hair under the hood to increase the volume of the real hair of the owner of this hood. All these discoveries from the campaign of 1898 were extraordinary, and I wanted to make the visitors of the exhibition able to understand how precious they were. That is why I decided to work in partnership with the National Opera House of Lyon to create an historical reenactment of the Byzantine elegance based on the archaeological material we were rediscovering. During more than 1 year, I worked with the costume workshop of the National Opera House in Lyon to understand the garments from Antinopolis and to reconstruct them without any interpretation. It was kind of experimental archaeology on the material we had, and we spent a lot of time showing that material to the people of the workshop of the National Opera House in Lyon to understand everything about those garments. We tried to find very close fabrics, which was not easy. It was very difficult, in fact, and in some cases, we had to make reweaving of the fabrics because they don't exist anymore. Because we wanted to have the same effects of the garments. We used the same patterns to construct the garments, and we tried to understand the traces left on the textiles by the corpses to understand how the garments were exactly worn. We were able to recreate 10 complete costumes with accessories and shoes, 2 male costumes and 8 female costumes, showing the diversity and the refinement of fashion in late antiquity. I hired 10 fashion models and organized shooting, and I used the pictures. You can see the example of those pictures of the reconstructions of the exceptional garments we preserved. And I used those pictures in the main room of the exhibition, in the middle of the museum galleries. I created a scenography where the climax of the exhibition was the main room. In the floor, I created 6 showcases as an evocation of the graves in Antinopolis. You can see the showcases on both sides of the picture here. In each showcase was displayed a complete costume, 2 male and 4 female. The portraits of the dead, embodied by the models wearing the reconstruction of the garments, were floating above the graves, reflecting their image in the glass covering of the showcases, like ghosts of the past rising from oblivion. Here you can see the main room with the showcases, symbolizing the graves of Antinopolis with the fragments of the garments inside and the picture above. The experience really made us understand that we were not only speaking about archaeology, lost civilization, or art history, but about the aspirations and yearnings of a whole society, very close to our own approach and vision of fashion. It revealed the tastes of the inhabitants of the Byzantine Empire for luxury, the production local workshops, because the woolen tabby scratched after weaving of the riding coats, for example, were woven in Antinopolis itself, like the majority of the silk ornaments used to be applied on the riding coats, for example, but it reveals also the importations of material such as cashmere wool, which is imported from India, cochineal dye, which is imported from Armenia, or silk, which is imported from Extreme Orient at that time. But it reveals also the importation of finished goods like Persian silks. You have an example of Persian silks here, of fragments of Persian silk. The iconography is very close of its used by Egyptian weavers that you have seen in other examples, but the technical analysis reveals a very different way to weave this silk, which is very characteristic of Persian workshops. It revealed other importations. Here you have another example of Persian silk used as an ornament for a male costume, but also imported pieces from India, like this block printed scarf found in a Phenol grave in Antinopolis, made of cotton, which is not produced in Egypt at that time. Or this, here you have a detail of that scarf. Or this other example of an Indian importation, which is a scarf made of raw silk, woven and dyed in India and imported in Egypt, and found in a grave of Antinopolis. The incredible set of archaeological pieces preserved in Lyon, revealed by this exhibition, gave us a remarkable glance on late antique trends, which was, I think, the first time we could have this approach of archaeological pieces, thanks to the state of conservation of those complete costumes. It was really a very important rediscovery. Thank you for your attention.